Welcome. Today my AJM interview is with Dr. Katherine Christ from UniSA and Honorary Professor Roger Burrett from the Australian National University. The topic of today's conversation is their paper published in the Australian Journal of Management, special issue on grand challenges. The title of the paper is Implementation of Sustainable Development Goals, the Role for Business Academics. Here is the interview. Welcome, Katherine and Roger. It's a pleasure to have you here. So I'm going to start off by asking, what are the key insights for industry, policymakers and/or employees from your paper published in AJM special issue on grand challenges?
Okay, I'll start on that one. Thank you for the question, Victoria. I think when we look at the grand challenges generally, the Sustainable Development Goals, if we are to achieve them by 2030 in line with the United Nations objectives, it really involves everybody. The Sustainable Development Goals involve the public, they involve business, they involve policymakers, industry, business, and academics. And if we are to achieve them, we need everybody to come together. In relation to our paper, our focus was very much on really how business academics specifically can contribute to this space. Roger and I have done quite a bit of research on the research practice gap, because we feel that academics and practitioners, quite often there's a little bit of a divide between these two different groups. And that, especially when it comes to something as important as the grand challenges associated with the SDGs, we really need to bring these two parties together. So this paper was really about finding ways in which business academics could contribute towards achieving the SDGs by encouraging a transdisciplinary approach to research. So what that means is engaging with policymakers, engaging with industry, and engaging with practitioners, and also engaging across disciplines. I'm an accounting academic, but to achieve some of the challenges associated with the SDGs, I need to engage with people who specialise in the law, people who specialise in management, in marketing, and even in the sciences, IT people. There could be engineers that I engage with associated with these challenges. So it's encouraging a multidisciplinary approach, but also an approach where there is engagement with business.
And just to add to that, I'd say, yes, I've got similar background to Kate in the sense that we have an accounting background, but this is a broader paper which is looking at two industries. If you're considering the industry aspect, that's the education industry, and then the industries of various businesses. And so we're trying to look at ways in this particular paper which bring these two industries together, because to actually solve some of the SDG issues, there has to be collaboration between the two. And so the paper really is about looking to see what business academics do, and we narrow that down towards the development of knowledge initially, and then looking to see how they can help contribute towards the SDGs through working with the business sector. And that is, of course, through the application of knowledge. So we have these two ideas behind the paper initially. We discussed this at great length during the development of the paper, and we were looking at relationships that there are possible between the different parties. And so we came up with these 4 different relationships. And so one of the things which is quite important, I think, in relation to the paper is that we look at manager to manager relationships and the way that this impacts on the knowledge generation. We look at the way that managers interact with outsiders and outsiders interact with managers, and also how outside parties interact with each other, but can also influence what goes on within your own area. And so if you're looking at the education side, you have a different perspective from if you're looking at the business side. So we developed this framework as a way of trying to look at these relationships to see how we can get improvements in the relationships between the education or the business academics and practitioners.
So reflecting about the time when you wrote the paper, and now we're experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic, do you think that the pandemic has accentuated or changed the core messages in your paper, or brought any issues to light?
Well, I think when it comes to the Sustainable Development Goals, the pandemic has exacerbated and it made it more difficult. If it was a grand challenge before, it's even more challenging now to achieve some of these goals, particularly by 2030. We have objectives associated around no poverty. Obviously, with the global pandemic, a lot more people have lost work, people's incomes have been decimated, people have lost their homes, they've got no way to support their families. So obviously this is a huge problem. We also have issues around, obviously, health. Health is one of the big areas associated with the SDGs. And really, to achieve that, we need to get a vaccine. And we need to work out, well, how is the pandemic and these health-related problems going to implicate other areas of the SDGs? So they're all interrelated. So I think that's something we've got to remember. So I think really what was challenging before is even more challenging. And so what we have to do, this says there's a role for everyone. As I said before, it's all interrelated. And in relation to business academics, I think we have a lot of existing skills. We have academics who research across many different areas. And I think there is an opportunity now for them to reach out, to address these real world problems and these real world challenges that have been exacerbated by COVID-19. So reach out, work with business, work with the policymakers, work with government. I think that's something that it's in fact more important now. I would suggest it's always been important, but right now there is a much greater opportunity. And I think that academics need to think about their existing skill set and how they might be able to contribute to these areas. One of my particular areas, and one we focus on in the paper, relates to how business manages modern slavery risk. One of the SDGs, number 8, is about decent work and providing decent work conditions for all. And within that, we have a specific target about zero modern slavery. And for those of you who don't know, modern slavery, there's currently over 40 million people enslaved worldwide. And modern slavery is a term used to describe where the rights equivalent to ownership are exerted by one party over another. People think slavery ended with abolition, but it didn't. Now, I was researching this before the COVID pandemic hit, and I was very aware of the SDGs and SDG 8 and how this was associated with my work, which is one reason we brought this into the paper. But with the pandemic, the number of people who are likely to be exposed to modern slavery is really going to go up. There's a lot more vulnerable people in the world. When people are vulnerable, they sometimes will reach out for any opportunity, and there will always be unscrupulous people trying to take advantage of them. So with this in mind, I'm reaching out a lot to different policymakers, different practitioners. I was involved with a podcast the other day from the UK, discussing as a panelist modern slavery and the accounting profession alongside practitioners. So I think it's more important. The risks have gone up. the chances that we will achieve these goals has probably gone down. So we all need to come together, and business academics have a huge role to play in this space.
And I'll just add to Kate's comments that I think you've got a very interesting question here. And I believe there are quite a lot of academics and journals that are currently investigating, especially what the implications of COVID-19 are going to be for the different areas in which they work. But from my point of view, I think we're really very much at the beginning of this process. And I don't think we know exactly where it's going to go. So what COVID has done has added enormous uncertainty, even greater than in the past, to where we're all going to end up. We do know that we have found that businesses have been closed down, businesses have been required to close. We also know that universities have lost resources, and we know that they are shedding staff. These are aspects from the educational industry and the business industry side which have yet to work through. But you could look at a number of issues there, in particular in the business academic area, where we've lost an enormous number, and it's a disputed number, of casual staff. Casual staff, to me, are undervalued. I shouldn't say this really, but I think they're undervalued by universities, not just because they're there and can be used as a resource and be disposed of, but they are people who work often in other jobs, and they might work in business. So when they come into the class and they deal with students who are going to be future people in business, who might want to learn about the SDGs, these casuals bring their own experience to bear, and that experience is going to be lost. So in a sense, we don't know where this is going to go, but we need to be thinking at the university level about how we can bring this expertise back into play again, and bring the knowledge of casuals back into play. So Kate is saying how she's, as an ongoing academic, bringing this forward and engaging with people. And I think this is a positive aspect of the pandemic, that we have got much more access to webinars, international parties. We have webinars every day of the week almost, if you like, and you can speak with people who probably in the past many academics wouldn't have thought would speak with on a regular basis. And so there's a lot of extra opportunity there for academics to engage and collaborate, but we've got to be mindful at the same time that we don't lose the skill set of the people and the experience of the people who are already collaborating because they know about both of these industries at the same time.
So what are some future research directions suggested from your paper, or something that you're working on at the moment that you'd like to share?
Okay, well, when I think about this paper, I think of two different streams of potential research. First of all, within this paper, as Roger said, we did come up with a framework that was associated with how business academics contribute to knowledge generation, and then also the application of knowledge through both their research and their teaching. So in relation to the framework, I think there is an opportunity for other academics to look at that framework, to develop it further and see how it is applied and how it can be applied in the university environment. So I think that's probably the first real direction for research. However, this paper is not just a framework, it's also, I think, a call to action for academics. It's about making them realise that they do have a role to play when it comes to the many challenges that are associated with the SDGs. And as I said before, anyone, whatever discipline that you come from, I think you will find one of those SDGs where your background and your skills will be applicable. So I think, and in relation to business academics, It might not be all of them, but there will be some where you can draw on your knowledge, draw on your expertise, your skills and help. So I think the other aspect is it's a call to action. It's saying to business academics that if you want to make a real difference with your research, we can't just operate in a silo. Okay, we can't just sit in our little office. For me, it would be on North Terrace down in Adelaide, and conduct research that ultimately is not going to get out there and reach end users, that's not going to actually bring about change in the real world and change in business. I think one thing we would like to see is more academics reach out. And that's really hard for a lot of academics. A lot of academics don't like. I've had some people tell me they don't want to engage with business. That's why they became an academic. But I think it is a skill. And I think it's something that academics can develop over time. If you're not good at it, you know, get in touch with a colleague who is. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. Reach out to policymakers, reach out to business, find out how you can work together to solve some of these problems. I'm doing this myself in relation to my research on how businesses account for modern slavery risk in line with the Australian Modern Slavery Act 2018. So I've got a whole research agenda around that. And because it's about helping businesses really struggling with this area, I'm continually reaching out. I'm continually writing for business-related industry publications. I'm reaching out to policymakers, putting my hand up to go on committees. And that has really broadened my understanding of my own research area so much. I have received insights from professional bodies, practitioners, from government that I would never have realised had I just stayed looking at Google Scholar, looking at Scopus and looking at my academic journals. So I think what I would like to see happen and what I would like to see academics at least thinking about as they read this paper, I would like them to think about reaching out, getting out their office, reaching out to the people in business. And if there are any business people or industry people who are listening to this podcast, if you've got a problem and you've got a problem associated with the SDGs, reach out to the academic institutions, find a researcher who's interested in this area and see what you can do together. Because business has unique knowledge sets and skills, academics have unique knowledge sets and skills, and together I think we can create some real world solutions, and that's what the SDGs are all about.
And the SDGs are very focused on sustainability. And for me, most of the research that I'm involved with, I'm concerned about bringing together the different aspects of sustainability. And so you're concerned. My initial research many years ago started with looking at environmental issues and then moved on more recently to think about social issues. But behind all of the business activity, almost by definition, is some economic aspect, some commercial aspect that's related to the financial side. The problem with collaboration for the future in this area, which has existed for some time, is that many academics, they like to be critical, I think, of businesses almost because they have a financial aspect in their mind, which they set over and above economic and social. But from a sustainability point of view, I believe the importance of this paper is it does draw attention to the various relationships between parties that exist, where you're trying to bring together in this collaborative way, as Kate mentions, the different social, economic, and environmental aspects, so that we can help achieve these as best possible. We do have to concern ourselves as well in the current pandemic with the fact that perhaps there'll be a delay in achieving these goals, and some of them, but some of the goals, perhaps on the health side, we might achieve faster than we expect because so many resources being pushed into that area. and so much extra research is being pushed into the health side too. And so there are positives, there are negatives, there are great uncertainties for the future. There's enormous scope for the development of knowledge. And so knowledge development, I would see as being a key aspect that comes out of the current situation. But we have to work together and bring ourselves together. Even the people who don't necessarily want to work directly with business, as academics in our own areas, we should be able to discuss with them and bring the messages that they are putting forward out into the open so that we can get this collaboration with the business side.
Well, thank you both very much. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. It's been a pleasure for me too.
Thank you, Victoria, for allowing us the opportunity.